Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Sauron commanded many terrifying creatures, orcs, trolls, fell beasts, warlike men of the east and south, wraiths. Yet among all his servants none were more dreadful than the Nazgûl. And even among them one stood above the rest, the Witch King, their leader, a dark sorcerer, ruler of Angmar and Sauron's loyal hound, who carried out every command of his master. But how did he come to such a fate, and who was the Witch King before he became that dreadful figure in a black helm? Let me tell you. Like all the Nazgûl, save one exception which I will speak of another time, the origin and past of the Witch King is veiled in mystery. Little is known, but piece by piece we can gather fragments of hidden truth. What is certain is that he was once a man, not a mere peasant or knight, but a ruler among men. For it was to mortal kings that Sauron, in the Second Age, gave the 9 rings of power, binding them to his will. All 9 kings of men became enslaved to him through those rings, and the most powerful of them was the Witch King. His true name has been lost to time, but it is known that even before receiving the ring, he had already studied sorcery, mastering dark arts with great skill. Perhaps that is why he rose as the strongest of the ring-bearers and became their leader. Without the Witch King, Sauron would have had no chance of victory. His role in Sauron's designs is impossible to overstate. Only thanks to him did Sauron slowly recover after Isildur, Aragorn's ancestor, cut the ring from his finger and cast him into a bodiless shadow for long centuries. Sauron entrusted his faithful servant with a task that seemed impossible: to destroy the great northern kingdom of Arnor, which at that time rivaled Gondor in strength. The Nazgûl's leader accepted this charge, and to accomplish it he founded his own realm in the north, Angmar. From there he waged endless war upon Arnor, weakening it until it fractured into 3 lesser kingdoms and eventually collapsed entirely. For centuries he distracted the eyes of men and elves, keeping them focused on the wars of the north, while Sauron secretly regained his power in the east. It was during those days that the Witch King received a prophecy from the elf Glorfindel, who foretold that his doom would not come by the hand of man. In later years he wrought other deeds as well. He slew the last king of Gondor, goading him into single combat with accusations of cowardice. With that death, the royal line was broken, and Gondor would be ruled only by stewards for centuries to come. He struck down Theoden, king of Rohan, who had been a constant thorn in Sauron's side and a steadfast ally of Gondor. He captured several strongholds of great importance, including Osgiliath and Minas Ithil. And yet, why was the Witch King slain so easily? Why did so many kings and champions fail, while a woman of Rohan and a hobbit accomplished what they could not? The answer lies in the prophecy. The Witch King could not fall by the hand of man, and so it was a woman, Éowyn, who struck the fatal blow. But even she could not have killed him with an ordinary blade. Her weapon was likely one of the Númenórean-forged swords, wrought to be stronger and deadlier against such dark foes. Thus ended the tale of one of the most charismatic and terrifying villains of the Lord of the Rings. The Witch King may have been the mightiest of the 9, yet he was not alone in his dreadful service. Around him stood 8 other figures, once kings and lords of men, now hollow wraiths bound forever to the will of Sauron. Their identities, like his own, are clouded in shadow, and much has been lost in the mists of history. Still, faint traces remain, whispers carried by the chronicles of Gondor, the songs of the Elves, and the dark rumours that trickled out of the east. To understand the full horror of the 9, one must look beyond the Witch King and glimpse what became of those who once wore the rings of power. Some traditions speak of 3 great lords of Númenórean blood among the 9. They were men of the Black Númenóreans, who had turned from the wisdom of the Valar and embraced the worship of darkness long before Sauron gifted them their rings. These men, skilled in sorcery and prideful in heart, were already inclined toward shadow. When the rings came into their possession, they accepted them eagerly, believing that they had found a path to immortality and dominion. In truth, they had found only eternal slavery. It is said that 2 of these black Númenóreans ruled coastal realms in the south, mighty seafarers who had built kingdoms with their fleets. They vanished suddenly, their thrones left empty, their people scattered. What became of them was revealed only centuries later, when their pale, faceless shapes rode behind the Witch King at the gates of Minas Tirith. Others among the 9 are thought to have come from the east, where vast empires of men rose and fell beyond the knowledge of Gondor. Of these eastern kings little is known, but it is whispered that they were sorcerers and warlords who commanded legions and held sway over countless tribes. Sauron's influence reached them early, and when he offered rings of gold and power, they bent the knee without resistance. Their names are forgotten, their language is lost, but the shadow of their cruelty endured. In the War of the Ring, the great hosts of the Easterlings marched not merely for fear of Sauron, but also out of obedience to their ancient Wraith Lords, who had once been their kings. Among the 9, there was said to be at least one man of Harad. Some scholars of Gondor believed that he had been a desert chieftain, a man of burning eyes and silken robes, who ruled caravans and oases with an iron hand. His people worshipped the sun, but he turned from the light and gave himself to the black flame of Sauron. To his followers he vanished into myth, becoming a god-figure whispered of in bedtime tales. Yet in truth he rode ever after as one of the 9, his scimitar a shard of terror, his form a shadow that struck fear into the south even centuries later. The transformation of these men into wraiths was no sudden act. The rings granted them unnatural life, long beyond the years of any mortal man. At first they grew in power and glory, their rule lengthening, their wealth increasing. Their people thought them blessed. Yet slowly their bodies began to fade, their eyes turned pale, and their voices grew hollow. They walked more often in the shadow world than in the light, and eventually they became invisible altogether, save when they clothed themselves in black raiment and armor. By then their wills were no longer their own. They were tethered to Sauron, hearing his call across vast distances, obeying his command as if it were their own thought. The Elves, who had watched with sorrow as men fell one by one, called them the Ulairi. In Rivendell it was written that each Nazgûl had once possessed a kingdom, a following, and a name, yet all of this was devoured by the power of their rings. When Sauron was defeated and cast into shadow, they did not die. They endured in a kind of twilight, unseen, wandering the dark corners of the world until their master returned. It was said that their cries echoed in ruined fortresses, and their whispers haunted tombs and barrows. To stumble upon one in those ages was to fall into madness, for even diminished they were beings of nightmare. The Witch King commanded them, but each wraith had its own cruel nature. One was known for his hunger for blood, striking down enemies with savage ferocity. Another was remembered as a cunning deceiver who sowed treachery among men, turning brother against brother before cities fell to ruin. Yet another was said to be obsessed with secrets of the dead, lurking in burial mounds and graveyards, speaking to spirits and binding them to his will. These dark proclivities, once the ambitions of mortal kings, became twisted into monstrous reflections of what they had once been. It is not hard to imagine the terror of facing them in battle. Their mere presence broke courage, their unseen eyes pierced armor and flesh, and their shrieks unstrung the bows of even the bravest warriors. Horses reared and fled before them, fires faltered and grew cold. No army could stand long against them, unless shielded by elven light or weapons wrought with ancient power. And yet, for all their dread, the Nazgûl were not invincible. They were slaves to the One Ring and to the will of Sauron. Without him, they could not endure, and when he was finally destroyed, they too were swept away like smoke in a storm. Their cries at that final hour were said to be the most dreadful sound ever heard in Mordor, the wailing of 9 kings bound and broken as they were cast into the void. But questions remain. Were they utterly annihilated, or do echoes of their spirits still drift in the unseen world, tormented and restless? Some say that the fate of wraiths is not the same as death for mortal men. Having lingered so long in shadow, they may have no true end, but wander in darkness beyond the circles of the world. If this is so, then perhaps the Nazgûl have not ceased to exist at all, but remain imprisoned somewhere beyond the reach of both Sauron and the Valar, waiting, yearning, hating. It is a grim thought, but one worth pondering. For if the rings of power could twist the mightiest kings of men into eternal thralls, what does that say of mankind's hunger for power? The story of the Nazgûl is not only a tale of dark sorcery, but also of human weakness. Each of the 9 believed he could master the gift, bend the ring to his own will, and stand apart from Sauron's grasp. And each of them was wrong. Their fate serves as a warning that no mortal, however great, can seize eternity without losing himself entirely. This is why the memory of the 9 lingers in every corner of Middle-earth. The men of Gondor still tell stories of the faceless riders who haunted Osgiliath. The Rohirrim sing of the black captain who broke their king upon the fields of Pelennor. In the east and south, the names of forgotten warlords live on as cursed gods, feared rather than worshipped. And among the elves, who remember all, there is only silence, for they know too well the tragedy of men who sought immortality and found instead eternal slavery. The Witch King may have been their leader, but the terror of the Nazgûl was the sum of all 9. Without them, Sauron would have lacked his most feared weapon. With them, he became a shadow that darkened all of Middle-earth. Their story, though shrouded in secrecy, is one of the darkest chapters in the long war between light and shadow. And though their shrieks have fallen silent, the echo of their presence lingers, reminding us that power, once surrendered to darkness, can never truly be reclaimed.